Our first guest today on the Morning Brew is a great friend of mine, and I'm just delighted I finally got him on the show. We interviewed on the radio many years, many times, and I just love his insight on relationships, marriage, and the frailties of life.
Yes.
And John Thurman is here, the Get a Grip guy. John, good to see you.
Good morning, Larry. Great to be with you. Love the set, love the show.
Thank you very much. John, I heard you have a new book coming out.
Yes, I do. It'll be released hopefully before Christmas. It's called Get a Grip on Depression. Don't you love those creative titles?
Yes. Well, great.
Signed the book deal a couple of weeks ago, and we'll do the final edit in the next couple of weeks. So I'm really excited about that.
Well, you have to come back for that.
Yeah, we'll do that.
So does that tie in a lot with the relationships then?
You know, it really does. It's amazing how much depression and being blue can impact a relationship. It really basically saps the energy right out of it.
Yeah.
Well, today happens to be Global Forgiveness Day.
That's a good thing.
Yes. And if I learned anything in church, I learned that the forgiveness part is one of the most difficult things you can do spiritually and emotionally.
Yes, it really is.
But it's something that you probably should figure out how to do.
You know, you really should. In marriages, we look at what are the top 5 issues for relationships. And the first one is money. Regardless of whatever research you look at, money seems to be the first one. And that's usually, there's a little bit more month than money.
Yes.
The other 4 things in a relationship that break out would be intimacy, how to raise the kids, how to work as a couple, and what to do with those outlaws or in-laws. Bigger picture, though, the thousands of couples I've seen. And Larry, last year I was sitting around just trying to figure out how many hours I've got in the chair. It's like 35,000 hours.
Oh my gosh.
That's a lot of listening.
That is.
And when we boil down a lot of the issues with couples, it gets down to be resentment and bitterness. And what typically happens is there are reasons a couple should be angry and upset. You know, it's like if someone cuts you off in traffic, I doubt you're going, well, thank God that's over with. Most of us, if we had the power, would probably take care of business with the car and its driver, but usually within a few seconds we get over it because we too have been mindless.
Right.
Yes.
What happens in relationships lots of times is that we tend to nurture the hurts and rehearse them, and that becomes more like bitterness and resentment. And what that does with men who are having resentment issues, we tend to pull out of the relationship. We tend to isolate, go into our man caves. And many times our wives and girlfriends will tend to pursue us.
Oh,
To
just
try to
keep
fix
on
it.
and keep on.
Into the man cave.
Into the man cave, correct. And so we want to find some ways to kind of break that up a little bit so that power of resentment and bitterness goes away, and forgiveness is the way you do it.
But I mean, I know in relationships, sometimes it can be really hard to forgive.
Oh yeah,
But if you don't forgive, it's going to keep coming up and keep coming up.
that's right. And
It'll
it
just
grows
ruin
with
your
interest.
relationship. Yeah.
It just gets worse.
Now, forgiveness is not about that person that you're angry with.
No, it's always
about you.
It's
Yeah.
always about me. It's always about me. A friend of mine, Jack Allen, is an ethicist. Now, he's from South Texas, so he can make ethicist a 6-syllable word. And I love the way he put it because he keeps things simple for my simple mind. He says, you know, this is what forgiveness really means. First of all, acknowledge that I made a mess. I made a mess. Secondly, confess the mess, particularly if it was your spouse. And third thing you do is clean your mess up. Now, way too many guys, Larry, you and I are guys, so we know how this works. We tend to be the minimalists when it comes to forgiveness. It's kind of like, well, baby, if I did anything wrong, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, that's so
Don't really
lame.
address it.
That is so lame.
I'm sorry. I'm going to go watch the game now.
That's right. Where's the remote? When really what we need to do is we need to say something like this, and I'm going to look at you on this one.
Oh.
We're role playing. You'll feel a little bit weird here for a second. Honey, only now am I beginning to realize how deeply I hurt you when I did that. Would you forgive me? You'll forgive me, won't you? You look like it's just, I got to think about it.
Just kidding.
And so really cleaning up your mess is the big thing.
Yeah. So just kind of taking responsibility.
Taking
then.
responsibility.
Yeah.
And it's not up to me if the other person forgives me or not, but it is up to me to own where I messed it up.
Yeah, that's really important.
What can the woman say to the man?
I forgive you. Don't ever do this again.
Yeah, exactly.
I forgive you.
Don't make this a habit.
Those are really hard words to say, though, because when you say, I forgive you, that means you're giving up kind of your right to expect a pound of flesh.
But I was
Yeah.
taught that by forgiving somebody, that doesn't absolve them
No,
from whatever mess they created.
no,
That's not an absolution
no,
at all.
that's not absolution
Right.
at all. If I borrow $1,000 from you and tell you I'll pay back in 6 months, and you don't see the money or me for a year, you would have probably forgiven me. And next time you see me, it might not be the happiest encounter.
Yeah.
I said, hey, Larry, sorry about the $1,000, but I got this new deal. Where you're going to say, nope, good to see you, John. I'm glad I've forgiven you, but you're not getting a plug nickel out of me, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what it's about.
It really is just about releasing.
So then what are some tools then? I mean, besides just saying, okay, I'm sorry for what I've done. What are some ways that you can learn to forgive people? Because yeah, it's easy to just say that, but a lot of times it kind of gets stuck in someone's head, and then down the road something else happens, and then it comes back up, and it's like, oh well, I remember 2 months ago you did this, and
Oh yeah, my wife will go, it was August the 12th, 1998. Winds right at south-southwest at 8:10. When you said this to me, I went,
how do you remember?
I said, what? Be ready to forgive often.
Yeah.
And if something comes up, knock it down. I tell you, so many people are so intimidated by forgiveness and owning their own stuff. It's a shame in our culture today that we're just trying to find a way to extend blame to everybody else so I don't have to take personal responsibility. A famous teacher one time was asked, how often should I forgive? And he said, well, 7 times 70. Now, all my friends out at the labs will go, okay, well, that's this many times. That wasn't the intent. The intent was just maintain just an attitude of forgiveness, because
Right.
if you don't forgive, it'll come back and bite you.
Yeah.
So in a relationship, how much past history is fair game?
Well, I think you need to be able to have those conversations where you take care of past history early on. Really, what happens is we tend to keep an account of wrongdoings. And when you do that, that doesn't do anything to build up the relationship. It's kind of like we keep a running balance.
Yeah.
You owe me. Oh, you
Yeah.
owe me. And when you live in the past like that and keep rehearsing the hurts, you're going to ultimately destroy your relationship.
So yeah, and some people will say, well, the past is in the past, let's leave it there. So in relationships, is that a right thing to do, or?
Well, we don't want to keep an account of all the things other people have done to us. That'll make you crazy, number one. I
Yeah.
mean, if you just keep picking on that stuff. I think the key is to look at a heart attitude of someone. If my spouse is, say, like I said, my wife, I've been married 41 years, and sometimes she'll actually admit she was wrong.
Yeah.
I've actually taped it once.
I had to tape it.
To tape it. But that type of attitude helps keep the communication open. What happens when we get locked into positions? I'm not going to change. I'm not going to ask them for anything until they ask it for me. That's where I build walls and what we want to do. There are enough distractions to healthy relationships as it is. And if we can deal with bitterness and resentment and do what we can do to forgive, and forgiveness just means to release, just to let it go.
And I think a lot of people have a hard time with that because it's almost like showing a sign of weakness in some people's lives. So they're like, well, I can't do that. They'll see me as weak. And
Yeah, and that is a real risk. Now, releasing doesn't mean you turn into a wimp.
yeah.
We want to
Suddenly,
embrace boundaries.
It's not
Right.
unicorns and rainbows at
No.
that point.
No, those don't exist. If you're seeing those, call me. We have deeper things to talk about.
Yes. It doesn't mean you're weak. It just means that you're maybe more comfortable in your own skin and with who you are.
It really is. And one of the ways you can liven up any relationship is to say, I was wrong. Will you forgive me? That can cut through so much fluff and anger and hurt in a relationship. I was wrong. I completely missed the boat on this. Would you forgive me?
Yeah.
And then what happens is you kind of put the other person in a position, well, do I forgive him or not?
Well, John, I have to ask. So you've been married for 41 years.
Yes, last
What-
week.
Wow. Well, congratulations.
Well, thank you. Happy anniversary.
What is the key to your marriage's success?
That's a great question. My wife would answer it this way, and I agree with her. We've been married 41 years, and someone asked Angie when we were about 30 years in, said, what's the secret, Angie? And she said, we never quit on the same day. John can quit on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I can quit on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Saturday night or Sunday, because we go to church, we say, Jesus, we really messed it up this week. And he usually goes, yeah, let's give it another start. And so we just never quit on the same day.
Yeah.
That's a great answer.